Okay. A warm welcome to everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session. In today's webinar, we will discuss what do we do with Oracle Discoverer by Splash BI. My name is Ashna H. Anand, and I am a solution consultant at Ensaan Technologies and your host for this webinar. Please be sure to type your questions into the question box in your control panel during the session. Our speakers for today are Graham and Rishabh. Graham is a sales director for EMEA at Splash BI. He has worked in the field of business intelligence and reporting solutions since 1980 and within the Oracle community since 1991. He served as a director of the UK Oracle user group for 5 years and has written many white papers and presented at many conferences and trade shows. On the other hand, Rishabh Menglani is a Splash BI Solutions account manager. He is a techie by heart and loves solving data problems. He has extensive experience in working with customers to resolve their reporting and analytics needs for Oracle applications. Rishabh has also worked with several big data projects in the past and has helped many customers put in place reporting and analytics strategies based on industry recommended best practices. I'll give it over to Graham right now. He will introduce you to Splash BI and Splash TM.
Thank you very much, Ashna. As you can see from this slide, so we've been around as a company 20 years. We're based in the US, UK and India. A lot of customers globally, roughly nearly 300 employees now, and we work across nearly every industry there is. The bits that are going to be of interest to you mostly today are Splash DM, which is our Oracle Discoverer migration utility. Allows you to migrate like for like your Discoverer workbooks to Splash BI reports, which you'll see in depth. And down towards the second from the bottom corner on the right, you'll see Splash EBS, which is our data model and connector that allows us to connect Splash BI to Oracle Business Suite to do your reporting, honor your security, everything like that. And you can actually use that without the Discover migration, because if you want to subscribe to our pre-built content, there's 1,400 pre-built reports, 25 pre-built dashboards that you can use as well. And we have other products, but this thing with all of our solutions is that they're all built on our own BI platform, Splash BI. Thank you, Ashna.
Thank you, Graham. Moving on to a quick introduction to Ensaan Technologies. Ensaan Technologies is a boutique HR technology company with headquarters in Dubai and offices across GCC. We provide solutions in 4 areas within the HR technology domain. As you can see on the screen, it's operational HR, strategic HR management, talent acquisition, and learning and development. Ensaan represents many of the leading and innovative global HR technology vendors in the region, and we sell, implement, and support solutions in the region. Rishabh, can you? Yeah, thank you. Okay, so a quick introduction about Datacraft. Datacraft brings in best-of-class data and advanced analytics platforms and solutions to help organizations drive deeper and faster insights from varied and complex data sources. They have been doing this for the past 5 years with over 100 projects. Present in 6 cities across 3 countries, they have a team of over 50 professionals ranging from data architects, data scientists, big data experts, data engineers, data analytics, analysts, sorry, my bad, BI developers, etc. Datacraft helps organizations manage the full data and analytics lifecycle from data integration, data storage, data migration, data management to business intelligence, and by harnessing the power of machine learning and artificial intelligence, and eventually bringing in value and insights to the business. Now, without further ado, I will turn the time over to Graham and Rishabh. Over to you guys.
Thank you very much. So this is our agenda for this morning. We've done the introductions. We'll do a brief piece in a minute on why we're here. Then we'll talk about how we can help you mitigate the risks associated with Discoverer. And believe me, there are a lot of risks. Then Rishabh will show you a live demonstration of Splash DM, and then we'll talk about some customer use cases and return on investment. There'll be some poll questions as we go through the agenda, and we'll finish up with a Q&A. As Ashna said at the start, please put your questions on the chat at any point. They will be picked up and will be addressed at the end. Okay, moving on. So, Discoverer. Discoverer was de-supported or put into sustaining support in 2017. Its end of life was communicated to people in 2014, and it's amazing how many organizations are still using it. This gives all sorts of problems to organizations by way of compliance, technical, business. If you're a publicly quoted company, how do you comply with SOX, for example? All sorts of issues that can arise out of support and certification. It's not compatible with eBusiness Suite 12.2. You can still use it with 12.1, and you can still use it with EBS 11. And we do have customers still using EBS 11i, for example. But you can only use it if you don't keep your patches up to date, because once you get to a certain patch level, it's important that you apply all the patches to get you to the right level of support with Oracle. And at that point, Discoverer can break. It won't necessarily. We've seen examples of customers that have continued to use it and it will work. But when it comes to eBusiness Suite 12.2 and your upgrades, it certainly won't work, because within both HCM and General Ledger, for example, there are so many changes to the tables that the reports will not work unless you rewrite them. We have seen examples of a couple of customers where they have rewritten those reports and they work for a while, but eventually with the online patching that you get with 12.2 and everything like that, they do fall over. So this afternoon, what we're talking about is how we're going to protect your investment. How can we take what you've already got and not force you to throw it away and not force you to spend hundreds of thousands on replacing what you have as a tried and trusted reporting platform? I think we're now going to move to our first poll question. Ashna?
Yeah, just a minute. You can go ahead and answer the poll on your screens.
Yeah, so do you have a strategy for already replacing Discoverer? And as you can see, you have three choices: no, you may already be working on it, or yes, you have a strategy. We'll give everybody a minute or so to answer. Do we have a result on that one, Ashna?
Yeah, I'm just publishing it.
Okay, thank you.
There you go.
So, yeah, 64% say no strategy at the moment, 21% are already working on it, and 14% have a strategy in place at present. Okay, thank you. Right, let's move on then, Rishabh, please. So, how do we believe we can protect your investment? Let's have a look at what we have here. So, customers have been using Discoverer since 1997, I believe, and in that time have spent millions of pounds, dollars, euros, dinar, everything, every currency you can think of. It's been used all throughout the world. A lot of people don't actually own and didn't buy the product. It was gifted by Oracle when you bought eBusiness Suite. So people aren't actually paying for support. There are organizations that use Discoverer to report against other Oracle solutions. So not necessarily eBusiness Suite, but direct against database or against third-party Oracle built solutions, or even your own custom built solutions. And again, we can migrate all of those reports for you. But given all that money that's been spent, and given that it's tried and trusted and that it's certified and that your users love it, why throw it all away and start again? You've probably got thousands of active workbooks. The customer we found with the biggest number of workbooks had 70,000. And that's not a good thing. The reason they had so many was because they were constantly changing their staff. They had no internal Discover expertise, and what their staff were doing, because it was the only way they knew how to do it, was every month taking a copy of the report, rebuilding it and rerunning it, and then they would do the same the next month. When it came down to it, they had about 1,400 unique reports that had to be migrated. You've probably got multiple business areas and you're probably doing cross-business area reporting. You'd be amazed at how few of the current new reporting platforms and tools out there, including the BI platforms, struggle with cross-business application area reporting. And you would have spent a substantial amount of time training your users. So why throw that all away? So over the next 40 minutes or so, we hope to show you that you don't need to throw it all away, and that with our Splash DM migration utility, you will be able to protect that investment. Right, so what does Splash DM do for you? So on the left-hand side, you've got Discoverer. On the right-hand side, you've got Splash BI. It literally will take your entire Discoverer estate, not just cut and paste the SQL, which is what most of our competition and many of the consulting companies that are offering solutions out there do. They cut and paste the SQL into a different reporting tool for you. But we migrate the entire estate. That means that we keep your workbooks intact, we protect the investment that we've been talking about, and we give you like for like. And we'll talk about that in more detail in a minute, but that will include things like security, it will include descriptive flex fields in your reports, it will include formatting, it will include some of the really complicated and complex functions that are available within Oracle and Discoverer for reporting. Whereas what you end up with, if you cut and paste the SQL, is a fixed format report that requires technical knowledge or IT support every time somebody wants to change the report. It's not self-service and it can't be edited. I'll hand over to you, Rishad, now to talk us through the Discover and Migration utility.
Thanks, Brian. Thank you. So as Brian mentioned, we're talking about the Splash BI Discover Migration utility, and our core principle is to keep your workbooks intact. And this slide basically represents a step-by-step approach that we take to migrating your entire EUL, all your entire Discover estate. And as you can see, it talks about migration of business areas, which is one-time process, and then exporting workbooks from Discover to make them migrate within Splash BI. One of the steps, which is an important step, is again, understanding the security of it. So if you see, this step migrates the worksheet, the metadata, including all your columns, your calculation columns, the conditions, the custom functions that you might have set up over the year to fulfill the business requirements, and at the same time maintain the similar sort of an output type that you've got. And we'll see that live during the demonstration as well. The core principle of our utility is to provide a like-for-like replacement for Discover. So as you can see on this particular slide, what we've got is on the left side is the individual components from Discover, which get converted into those components within Splash BI. So an EUL would become an overall business application, the business area converted into a domain, which is a Splash BI terminology. And it contains subcomponents like your tables, your folders that were there, your joins, your item classes, and at the same time, the conditions, whether they were mandatory, optional, and we'll see this when we actually migrate a report as well. We've always seen certain situations where customers have set up so many conditions, parameters, page items, and the security as well to make sure that it fulfills the requirements as set out by the business. Those conditions get converted into filter criteria, and those same security gets converted into a shared property within Splash BI. And all of this is automated, and I'll show you how easy it is for anyone to actually migrate it shortly. From a like-for-like perspective, to give you an idea of what we can potentially achieve with the migration utility, you'll see this is a particular report that was there in Discoverer. And once converted, it was converted into a similar format now available using Splash BI's interface, which is much more refreshed, built on latest technologies, and also at the same time supporting the same complexities, the same formatting as such with totals, subtotals, and other details as well. Now, when we talk about Discoverer migration and the sort of customizations that we've seen over the years, helping a lot of customers globally, migrated more than 100,000 plus workbooks, we have basically made a list of supported Discoverer complexities. This is by no means a full exhaustive list. This is just a few things that we've come up with that are very unique per customer, and they have used them heavily, like complex calculation formulas using partition by obviously understanding whether there's a fan trap being observed within those query formations. So a lot of things that have been actually, as I mentioned, invested a lot of time upon to setting it up and making the workbooks function. And this is something that we guide all our customers as. You should always observe for other competitors for us, other companies that are offering you this solution, and always ask a question at the end. Will I be able to edit a migrated report? Will I be able to continue, making ad hoc changes to it? Can I extend it when my business comes back to a particular set of more questions? So most of the companies that are out there, they're basically migrating the SQL behind the Discoverer workbook, and hence they'll always lack the capability of showing how I can edit a migrated report, how I can reinvest in terms of making it more enriched with information as such. In the next slide, we'll talk about a couple of customer use cases. Prem, would you like to talk about these?
Thanks, Rishabh. So on here, you'll see some types of customer that we have. These are a global selection of some of our customers, and it shows you the data source of their Discoverer reports. As I said, it doesn't have to be Business Suite. So the top two, for example, were Oracle Database. The private financial services company had 238 workbooks. We did the migration for them. We have an offshore migration team that we can use. We can migrate anything between 50 and 120 workbooks in a week. The German Belite organization, they are doing this themselves. So they have an Oracle database where they have built their own application, and the data is extremely sensitive. So this is something that they're doing on their own. The others are all e-business suite. Some where we've replaced both Discoverer and Noetics, and others where we've replaced Discoverer and kept Noetics as the file view base for the data. And you can see quite a variation of customer located all over the world. The international port operator is in Singapore. The commercial vehicle automated manufacturer, we actually have two of those, one in Germany and one in the UK. And it's quite a selection of the different types of workbooks that they do. So that's an example of how the migration can be done. And the migration can be done by yourselves, it can be done by us, it can be done by a partner, or a lot of customers do it as a hybrid. So for example, we have customers where they've identified they have 50 very urgent workbooks that need to be migrated. They may be approaching year end at the time that they award the project, and we do those for them at the same time we train them, and then they do the rest. We have a script that we can provide our customers with, which they can run, which will determine how many unique workbooks have been run from Discoverer in a given period of time. We normally say go 15 months because not all of your workbooks are run monthly or weekly or quarterly or even annually. And at least that way you get to see how many of them are actually being done. And it's quite surprising how many workbooks exist in Discover estates compared to workbooks that are actually used and of value to organisations. Thanks, Rishabh. I'll hand back over to you, and I think now you might be prepared to give us a demonstration.
Yes, I am. I hope you guys are able to now see my Splash BI login screen.
Yep, we can.
That's great. Thanks, Ram. Thanks for explaining us the use cases. Now let's actually move into the live demonstration and talk about how Splash DM helps the customers migrate the workbooks. So just before that, as you can see, it's the first login method for Splash BI, and it's one product that's available across different platforms. So I can access Splash BI using a web browser, using Excel, and obviously using my mobile devices as well. So let's log in. And at the moment, I'm using my Oracle EBS credentials, but you can configure it for a single sign-on to work with other applications or other SAML-based authentication services that you might be using as an organization. Now, when I log in as a user, I see the home page itself, which is a quick summarization of the different reports, the dashboards that I've run in the past logins. So it's a quick summarization of what I've done in the past. And if I want to take a quick look of any reports that I might have done yesterday, I can easily just go in and select that particular output type as well. Now for this demonstration, I'm going to focus on mostly the Discover migration part, which is basically a process that needs to be performed. And I'll talk about it when I go into the administrative zone. Before going in, a quick word about the different modules that we've got in Splash BI. So as you can see on the left side, from an end user perspective, it is very easy to understand. If you are only working on reports, you would have access only to reports. And if you are an administrator, you would have access to all different modules within the product itself. So let's go in and see the Discover migration piece itself. Now, as we've highlighted throughout the presentation, it's a utility that we have created. So let's go into the utilities and talk about our Discover migration utility. Now, before we start any project, as Pam said, we give you a script to analyze how frequently the reports have been run. So you can prioritize based on the business running those reports in the past 15 or 18 months as to whether they need to be migrated or not. And that can also be done in this particular manner using our Discover usage functionality within the utility itself. So I would enter a start time and an end time, and I can actually see the reports that have been run in Discover in that duration. A few prerequisites when we actually start working on the project is we install a quick patch which allows us to understand what your Discover EUL is made out of. What are the business areas? What were the workbooks? What were their compositions? And then we can go in and start migrating the workbooks as well. So the only thing that I need to do for migrating a workbook is go in, create a connection to Discover, and then choose your file, which needs to be exported from Discover as a .ex format. Now, in the customer use cases, Graham had highlighted, the number of workbooks that we've migrated. So you don't need to do it one by one. You could do it in batches. So you could create it as a .zip file, upload all of those files as a combination, and then click on submit. Once you click on submit, what the product's now trying to do is trying to understand what is the composition of that Discover workbook? What are the sheets within it? Who was the owner of that particular workbook? What was the business area behind it? And then what was the last updated date, and so on and so forth. Now, you at this stage have an opportunity to maybe clean up that particular workbook. So you don't necessarily have to migrate all of them. You can choose to select maybe 2 of them, or choose to migrate only one sheet which has been used in the past. So this opportunity of migrating away from Discover is also to maybe standardize the reporting within the organization, maybe move towards more of a unified approach where departments across are using the same structure of the report and only ad hocly modifying it for one-time use. In this case, I'm going to select all my workbooks and just click on migrate. Now the product's basically migrating the underlying components. It's trying to understand what the security is, what was the share. And once done, as you can see, all 3 sheets were migrated in Discover. Now let's take a look at one of them. And it says messages, one report was created successfully. What was created successfully? Let's go in and take a look. So it was a table type layout. It had 7 columns, 2 calculation columns, parameters, conditions, and any sort of a security also, if there was, it has been converted easily into Splash BI. Workbooks from Discoverer get converted into reports and report sets in Splash BI. So let's now go in to the reports module to actually see how the report looks. Being an administrator in this particular scenario, I have access to all my reports, whether they were from running against an Oracle database, whether they were running against Oracle EBS or even Oracle Cloud. But let me quickly filter this particular sheet to show the reports that have been migrated. So on the top that you can see are the 3 sheets that have been migrated using our utility. And one point that I wanted to highlight here was that, as you can see, this column identifies who the owner of that particular report was. Whether that report was shared with me or I can see it as an administrator, that's the security that was underlining, defining it as well. Each report has its own unique functionalities on how it can be run. So in front of the reports, you can see these quick options. Again, a very interactive user interface. So I can go in and click on run. It opens up into what we call as a Splash BI tab. And on the left is a clean filters, separate segregation as to what the responsibility is. So EBS users who are on the call would identify as to how it was in Discoverer and how it comes in Splash BI. And on the left were the parameters that were there in your Discoverer workbook. Whether they were highlighted as mandatory in Discoverer, that same property has been, migrated over, and the default values under them has also been migrated using the utility. So let's click on submit and see. So the report goes into a processing state, and once completed, it will show up in this particular green manner. But again, with Discoverer, you had to always wait for a report to, finish up and then submit another report or act upon anything else. But in Splash BI, it's a multi-threaded environment. So I can now easily go in and maybe run my other report, which was my by month cross-tab layout that was prepared within the same workbook. So I can just go in, click on run for that particular report, and it'll open up within a new Splash BI tab, which is allowing the user to do multiple activities at the same time, not having to wait for one particular activity to finish up as such. So there we go. Now I can click on submit for this report. Again, it might take a few seconds, maybe a minute for that report to run. Let's see if the previous report has executed. Yes, it has. So these are the different output formats that you can see within Splash BI for the report that has been migrated. Starting from the first one, which is your HTML output, basically the same report output that you have opening up within the browser tab itself. So when I click on that, it opens up into a browser tab, and you might recall it as to what I showcased in the PowerPoint deck a few minutes back. This was the same GL report that was migrated with this sort of a setup, and it had certain subtotals done on the period name and at the same time the period number, but also had a total or a grand total that was set up for that particular entire sheet. Within Splash BI, you have various other output formats that you could use further on the reports. So you've got a PDF, which is a standard PDF, but you can do much more on that by making it more pixel perfect. So if you wanted to, at the end of the day, add your logo onto it, send it out while distributing the report, you can easily do that as well. CSV and XML both available for further integrated purposes, and Excel, which is the most beloved output format. So let's click on Excel, download the output, and see the workbook here as well. There we go. So in Excel, we've got the same formatting of the same report like we had in Discoverer. And then we've got one data sheet, which was basically the underlining data for that summarization or those totals and subtotals that were actually there. A third tab will always be provided within the Splash BI reports, which is going to be from your auditing perspective as to who ran that report, what was the responsibility, what was the domain, which is an equivalent of your business area that was being used. Coming back to the web browser, now already seeing all the files. So there's another one that we added specially for customers who loved using Splash BI only on the web front. So the web pivot format is basically any summarization that you might do within your Excel workbook. You can do a similar version within your web browser as well. So as you can see, and you'll recognize this from Excel, the 4 boxes that come up from a pivot format, you can just easily go in and say, I want to filter it out on the period name, but I want to see my values on the beginning balance. And then let's quickly pick up my period number as well. And I can click apply on that, add a particular period, similar to what you might have been doing so far in your Excel workbooks. So people who love using the web front, they can stick to that, or they can continue using Splash BI within Excel, independent of having to go back to the web version. Now, in the beginning, I mentioned that there are multiple ways of accessing Splash BI, one being the web version, which we've talked about, and we've went through the entire cycle of the Discover migration. And the second option that I mentioned was directly from within Excel. So within Excel, as you can see on my screen at the moment, there's a Splash BI Excel Connect plugin, which allows you to run reports directly from within Excel. So if I go in and bring up a blank workbook, I can go into Splash BI and log in directly from within the Splash BI workbook itself. Again, using my credentials, which are validated using the single sign-on mechanism that I might be using. Give it a few seconds, and the first thing it comes up with is a list of reports I have access to. So I can go ahead and run multiple reports directly from within Excel. So if, let's say, I want to run a finance report or an HR report directly, which I have access to in my web version, I can just search for it.
Rishabh,
Yes, Afna.
are you saying something? Because we were not able to hear you for like a few seconds.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Better. Yeah.
So, okay. So what I was actually talking about is if you want to run a particular report directly from within Excel, you can just go in, search for that report, and then you'll be able to submit that report depending on what responsibility you have or the filters that you want to submit. And you can just go ahead and submit that particular report. You obviously don't have to wait for that report to complete. You can go offline, work on other aspects, and even create reports if you want directly from within Excel. Our mechanism is to allow users to work directly within Excel if they love working in Excel, or if they want to stick to the web version, they can even do that. Now, this particular report that I've just executed is a little different because what I had done as a user was to give me extended functionality because I wanted to further go ahead and drill down and see more information, even though it's a transactional nature of the report. Maybe I wanted to see more information on my invoice. So I double clicked on that, and now it opens up that particular invoice's information directly within Excel. So this standard capability is called as a drill down capability, and it can be implemented by business users, the IT, and it's very easy to even implement. But let's say I want to create it as a more of a template of reports that I run every week. So if I now go in and say I want to run another report, which is my GL report, which was basically the one that I migrated from Discover. So I can go ahead and download that same report Excel output as well. So now I have multiple reports within that same workbook format, and I can continue to use it further. Maybe if it's something that I run on a monthly basis, I can come in and I can say, rerun both my reports but this time with different parameters. So I'm basically avoiding any redundant effort that I might have to do by creating those calculations, those templates that I might have made. All those is automatically handled by Splash BI. Now, we focused mostly on Discover migration and a couple of reports. Apart from that, there are certain standard functionalities that users love, which is mostly distribution, scheduling, and bursting, which is something that will come up and we can easily cover. If there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the question box as well. Coming back to the slide deck, I'm going to move on and talk about a particular concept, which we basically worked on with a lot of other companies and a lot of our customers to understand the value behind building the reports again from scratch or migrating them using something like our utility. So there's obviously the difference between the amount of money and time that the customer has already invested on that. But at the same time, moving to more of a generic BI platform, as you'll see on the first column, will maybe give them an extended functionality in terms of creating more differentiation. But will that solve the problem they've got? Will that make sure that the business process integration is still there? It is automatically going to lose out on the domain contextualization, might not have the same sort of connectivity with Oracle EBS and those sort of issues. Similarly, in the second column, what we've talked about is the prepackaged analytical applications, which might offer you some sort of cost effectiveness. The learning curve is going to be similar because they're going to provide you equivalent reports, but at the same time, you'll not be able to customize them. They're going to be mostly SQL based. They're going to have more and more technical effort involved. Whereas what we came up with was, because of the underlying power of Splash BI as a data platform, we were able to provide the customers with the customizability. We were offering them the Discover migration utility that was making sure their customizations were being migrated, the pre-built metrics, KPIs, a built-in data model, and at the same time, avoiding the overall effort to start again up, because you've got the built-in data model from Splash BI as well. Moving on to the next, I wanted to actually raise this question with everyone as a poll, which was, what do you believe to be the best solution? Building it again from scratch, buying it, or migrating it, or you don't know? And we'll give a couple of seconds for the audience to answer. Graham, it would be good if you can maybe share your experience on that one.
Okay.
Versus buy.
Yeah. So having done this for so many years now, once we finish the poll, I'll give a brief explanation of the potential costs involved of the choices of build versus buy. There's a lot of options out there. There are organizations, companies, competitors of ours that can offer you a hybrid between build and buy. But you need to look at the overall cost of everything that you're doing. So that's quite interesting. So 30% think that build might be the best solution. 50% buy, 20% don't know. Okay. Right, well, let's move on, close that then and move on to the next slide, please, Rishabh. Okay. So this is a real live customer use case of a migration that we did for a customer with 400 workbooks. Most reports, whatever solution you're using, you can categorize them into simple, medium, and complex. And as an average, we always tend to find that 30% of the reports are simple, 30% of them are fairly complex, and 40% of them are of medium type. And if you use an industry standard, people will tell you that whatever product that you're using, it should take you 12 hours to build a simple report, 20 hours to build a medium report, and 30 hours on average to build a complex report. Again, using average hourly rates, and these are quite low, so $80 an hour. We've assumed an average between doing it internally with an internal resource, which is obviously cheaper than bringing in a firm of consultants to do the work for you. So we've used a dollar rate of $80 an hour for onshore, $45 an hour for offshore. And because we offer a blended service when we do the migration, we've also created a blended rate as well. So within the table here, we're showing you the offshore cost of developing those 400 reports, which is $370,000. The onshore cost, if you do it with a company based locally, 660,000 roughly, and a blended cost of 486,000. And it'll take you 8,240 hours to build those 400 reports. That's the equivalent of 4.23 man years. So with a team of 5 people, you're probably still looking at close on a year to do that migration. Within Splash BI, using our migration utility, we charge the customer 60,000 for migrating all 400 reports, and it took us 10 weeks, and that was it. And the actual migration takes a lot less than 10 weeks, but the reason that it's a 10-week project is because obviously you have to have UAT. Now, when we do the migration using our utility offshore for our customers, all we migrate is all of the metadata, the EUL. We don't actually see any of the customer's data. So we migrate the EUL, we return them in blocks of 50 or 40, however the customer wants it to be done, reports at a time, and then they run the UAT against their data. And if there's a slight error, then they come back to us and we refine the report, because particularly when you get to the medium and the complex, particularly the complex ones, you can't necessarily do that in one go as simply as Rishabh showed you with the utility. And obviously you've got the license costs attached to this for Splash BI, but then again, whatever other solution you go with, you've got license costs. There's a quote here at the bottom, which I love. I've used this many, many years now. And organizations that are most likely to be able to benefit from a bespoke reporting and analytics solutions are those that can probably least afford it. And that's because they don't know where their data is, they don't know how to get hold of the data, they don't have the support that's required to do it. Whereas an organization that can afford it is least likely to actually benefit from it, because their users know what they want, their users know what they're doing, and they know how to use their data. So having something purpose built for them, it's the old 80-20 rule. You know, it won't necessarily give them everything that they want. And the important thing always to remember is when you build a reporting platform from scratch, your requirements change, your customers' requirements change, your users' requirements change quite frequently. You know, within the month, within the week, within the year, the requirements that people have for their reporting changes. So therefore, as the example that Rishabh gave you on the previous slide with the smiley faces, having a pre-built solution that's built on a platform, a BI platform, is the ideal solution for you. Thank you, Rishabh.
We've got the next poll question. Ashna, if you would please launch that for us. Thank you.
This is quite an interesting question because it reflects on what we said at the start about the risk of continuing to use Discoverer. So it'll be interesting to see. Perhaps we should have asked this question right at the start and then asked it again at the end to see if people have changed their mind based on what we've shown them. That is very interesting. So nobody already working on it, and a split 43% needing to start quickly and 43% on hold till 2022. What is really interesting is that somebody is happy to stay with Discoverer. That is quite an interesting idea. Maybe they're not moving to 12.2 of EBS. There are a lot of companies that are sticking with 12.1 for the time being, but obviously the support of 12.1 will also expire soon. So let's tell you a little bit about some of our customers. These are Splash BI users, and in particular Splash DM people that we've done the Discover and migration with. As you can see, they're based all across the globe, and they're based across multiple industries. Most of them are particularly well-known organizations that you'll find. If anybody has any questions in particular about anything, then please ask at the end. Thank you. Okay, Rishabh, let's hand over to you to talk about the platform.
Thank you, Graham. So interesting with the responses, my guess would be that a couple of them are already planning to move away from a couple of applications, so think that, that Discover might not be needed anymore. So from that perspective, we've always, went back to the customer that the platform's capability at the end of the day is to provide ad hoc reporting and with pre-built, dashboards and reports via different end user devices. But it's not just with Discover. We offer the same perspective of reporting and analytics for cloud applications like Oracle Cloud, Salesforce, Marketo, Workday, Ultipro, and Oracle Cloud Fusion applications as well, because we've now had quite for some time now, we've released real-time reporting with Oracle Cloud applications. So we've got customers who've migrated away from Discover to work well with EBS 12.2 while they work on the roadmap to Oracle Cloud applications as well. And we've been supporting them for that particular reporting aspect as well.
Rishabh, I have a question for you. So does that mean that somebody that is currently using Discoverer, but is in the process of or has already upgraded to 12.2 and now understands the risk associated with continuing to use Discoverer, if they have a plan and a roadmap to move to cloud, could they actually take their Discoverer reports, migrate them, and then eventually be able to use them in cloud as well?
Oh yes, that's correct, Graham. So with the skill set that we've got within our team, we have done a few projects like similar to those, which we have helped the customers move off on-premise applications like EBS and other ways, move them to Oracle Cloud while mitigating the risk that was associated with Discoverer. So throughout, our motto has been to maintain that business continuity as well. And at the same time, interestingly, Graham, when you asked about that question, right, we've always had that situation where customers have wanted to, maintain the data within EBS from a legacy standpoint. So we've also got Splash LD, which is one of our pillars that we'll focus on in the second webinar of our 3-webinar series. And the only thought I want to leave you guys with is dream to reimagine how you operate. It would be interesting to have one platform that allows you for your enterprise reporting and maintains your business continuity going forward as well. I'll hand back over to Asana.
Yeah, Rishabh, we have a few questions. Thank you. And now we'll just make some time and take the questions. It's just a reminder, please be sure to type your questions into the question box in your control panel. Rishabh, are you able to see the questions on your screen?
Yes, Asana, we are able to see it on the screen. So the first question is, the migration cost is a one-time or change charged by number of reports. Yes. So what we work with the customer quite closely is by helping them with, analyzing how many workbooks that need to be migrated, and then we come up with a particular cost associated, which is only a one-time cost for migrating that particular report. And yes, we do charge per workbook, per report as well.
But that's a fixed price. And it depends on the number of workbooks, because the more we do, the easier and less time it actually takes, because there's an involvement in the setup time. So if we did 50 workbooks, It doesn't mean that 100 will take twice as long or 200 will take 4 times as long. It doesn't work like that. So it's always a fixed price based on the number that are required to be done. If you're happy with me to answer the next one, Rishab, about the Discover and Migration project. So one of the customers that you saw on the customer slide was the City of Edinburgh. And we have done, working with an Oracle partner that's done the EBS upgrade, we have actually done exactly that project. So they've migrated all of their Discoverer workbooks, and they've also doing an upgrade from 12.1 to 12.2 simultaneously. We also have a customer that is using 11i, 12.1 and 12.2 of EBS simultaneously. 11i is the legacy data, 12.1 is their current live solution, and 12.2 is the solution they will be moving to in February. And they've done quite a big upgrade. So they're currently using 3 different versions of EBS and Splash BI reporting at the moment. Do you want to do the multiple business area one? And define?
I'll basically pick up the next 2 questions, which is, can I migrate a Discover workbook developed across multiple business areas and also with custom user-defined functions? So the quick answer is yes. Our utility ensures that all the underlying components that are for a workbook get migrated, as well as the custom user-defined functions are also migrated in a similar manner.
Okay, so let's look at the next one then. How does Splash BI understand EBS security? So I said about the company being in place for 20 years, and our 2 founders are both ex-Oracle. And 20 years ago, we brought out a solution called EIS Express, which was purely built as an e-business suite reporting tool. Splash BI came about as our next generation of that in 2014, 2015, because we had to move forward with the times. We needed something that wasn't only going to work with Oracle, so Splash BI will work with other data sources, as Rishab showed you on the architecture diagram. And yet, as part of what we built originally and as part of what we have now, we have all of the EBS security. So roles, responsibilities, single sign-on, Active Directory, everything like that, everything that you can imagine that is associated with Oracle E-Business Suite security is built into our Splash EBS data model and connector. Now, if you want to use other sources of data at the same time, you can, and those security elements can also be brought across. But Splash BI also has its own levels of security. So you can enhance what you have, or you can change everything to work according to one of the applications that you're actually accessing. Do you want to do a bit about mobile?
Yeah, of course. So yes, Splash BI has its own native apps that are available both on Android and on iOS. And it's not a web link like usually the other companies that do. It's a proper app which allows you the end user interface to run your transactional reports as well as dashboards. We've also got another question as to about the ad hoc reporting in Discover. When a user creates a report, the BA not connected, that means with no joins, gets disabled. Will the same functionality will be available in Splash BI as well? Yes. So the answer to the question is yes. And what happens in Splash BI is if there are no joins between 2 business areas, that particular object itself has been removed from that particular pane of selection. So what happens is the user does not get confused with 100 data points. You can give them only a selection of data points out of which they can choose. And if one data point is connected with another domain, is what we call that business area in Splash BI, then it will show up. Otherwise, that particular business area will not be available for creating a report as such.
Okay, right. Support after deployment and its costs. So Splash BI is sold on a subscription basis. It can be used on premise, it can be used on cloud, as you saw from the architecture diagram. It's normally subscription. We do also sell perpetual, but if it's subscription, then support is included within the annual subscription fee. If it's perpetual, then there's an annual support and maintenance fee. It's 24/7. We have a support portal, which all of our customers get access to, where they can log tickets direct. As I said, 24/7, supported by the US, supported by India, supported by teams in the UK as well. Its cost is dependent on the number of users and the data sources that you're accessing. So you have three different types of user. You have named user model and you have core. And then within those two different types of licensing, you have your admins, you have your developers, and you have your consumers. And the admins and developers are sold at one price, the consumers are sold at another. And you just add all that together with, for example, if you're using e-business suite connector, there's a price for the connector because we have to maintain that in conjunction with Oracle. If you're using pure database, then there's no price for any of our database connectors. They're all provided free. And that all added up becomes the cost of your annual subscription or the cost of your licensing. As well as the support portal, we have a community portal, which customers, users, all users from a customer can log into and access training videos, talk to other users from other organizations, share ideas, look at webinars, everything like that, attend training. Next one, is there a limitation to deployment on cloud or cost effect? Nope. You can run on-premise, you can run on private cloud, you can run on public cloud, and we can also provide a cloud solution for you. Just purely depends how you want to do it. And we do have some customers using a hybrid. So we have some customers where it's partially on-premise and partially on cloud. And we're currently working on a customer at the moment where part of our solution runs on-premise for them and part of our solution is actually running on AWS on cloud. I think there was also a question on the chat.
Yeah.
A couple there. Yeah, I've got those. So
I think we already answered the first one.
Yeah, the first one. So second one, does Splash BI replace complete functionalities of traditional BI solutions like Click, Power BI, Tableau? Yes. So that's the beauty of the element of Splash BI that wouldn't necessarily be available to Discovery users at the moment. And this is the reason why in the diagram that Rishabh showed you with all the smiley faces, the Splash BI column, every face was smiling. Because with a traditional BI solution like Click, Power BI, Tableau, Domo, anything like that, yes, there is far better functionality than was available in Discoverer. But none of those solutions will understand EBS security. None of those solutions are built for reporting. They're all built for analytics, visualizations, etc. But one thing we didn't show you, and we will be showing you in one of our future webinars with Ensaan and Datacraft, is that Splash BI does all that for you as well. And we already have some pre-built dashboards within our EBS model. And if you look at Splash HR, our people analytics solution, it comes with 800 pre-built KPIs and nearly 200 pre-built dashboards. But they can all be customized. If you subscribe to our pre-built content, you can copy, paste, you can edit, you can change everything that's available. So all the functionality that is available in a traditional BI platform is available within Splash BI, but it already has the solutions built upon it. Okay, and I think there's another question now actually on the Q&A part as well. Let's see, how much time is required to fully migrate from Discover to Splash BI? So if you've got 450 workbooks, probably 10 to 12 weeks. We could do the migration a lot quicker than that. we can migrate 50 workbooks in a week quite comfortably. And if we deploy a bigger team, we can do it quicker than that. So the actual migration effort we can do within about 5 or 6 weeks. But as I said earlier, to do your UAT, your customer UAT, will take a bit of time. Obviously, your users will have their day jobs to do at the same time as they're being asked to do the UAT. So scheduling UAT is sometimes quite difficult. But yeah, 10 to 12 weeks, we would say, for a project of that size. To implement Splash BI, this question that hasn't been asked yet, and I'll answer it just in case somebody's thinking it. Without the Discover and migration, to actually get Splash BI implemented and up and running and connected to a business suite takes 10 days. And that includes all your training that you need as well. There's a 10-day implementation and training, fixed price for doing that, and then you have your migration on top of that. I think we've exhausted all of the questions.
Yeah, I
Yes,
think
we have.
we have covered all of our questions. Graham and Rishabh, is there anything else you want to cover before we wrap up?
I don't think so, not from my side, Rishabh, for yours. Well,
Nothing.
to say, obviously, this is just number one in a series of webinars that Ensaan Datacraft and Splash BI will be running for you. Another question's just come on the slide that's on.
Yes, we will be recording the session,
Yeah.
and we will be sending you the recording post the webinar.
Yeah, perfect.
Great. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you to everybody for their time and for their attention.
Yeah, thanks to you, Graham, and to Rishabh for a great presentation. And thank you everyone for attending. We appreciate you being here. And thanks again for joining us today, and hopefully we'll see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you,
If you have any
everyone.
questions, you
Take
can
care.
get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or even email us if you have any questions. Rishabh, if you could just put on the next slide for a few seconds.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right, great.
Thank
Thank
you,
you so
everyone.
much.